Good evening, and it is a Wednesday, and we are under the fig tree. I hope I find you well. Some of you may or may not know what we do under the fig tree, but basically, what we do is just talk. There's no holy cows here. We talk about any and anything. And over the last couple of weeks, we've had an amazing time on this Wednesday services where the business people come and talk around principles that were coming from Proverbs 31. We've had the ladies come and talk around being a single mom. And last week, we had the youth come and talk about hearing the voice of God. And today, we're going to be talking about all things parenthood and all things marriage, so to speak. And this being obviously the month of June, I've been really excited to see fathers being celebrated, and my son also celebrated me. I mean, he gave me this, and I'm just showing it to you so that I'm sure how proud I am of my son. This was his gift to me, and the card said, "You rock, hands down." So super excited, and I hope that our guest got a better gift than this from his son. If not, then my son is the best son in the world. But today's guests are a seasoned couple, been married for over 10 years. If I'm counting, I think it's now close to 18 or so years. And they've got quite a lot of experience that we can learn from. So I'm going to ask Pastor Givemore and Precious Mushayi to join us. And Pastor Givemore and Precious, welcome to Under the Fig Tree. How are you doing in Johannesburg?
We are doing well. Thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this, to be under the fig tree. You need to tell us the secret about this fig tree, Pastor.
So the fig tree is just a name I came up with. I mean, where I stay, there's a lot of fig trees around. And I guess, you know what, when the sun is hot, you go sit under a tree and you just talk.
Yeah.
I used to go to the rural areas when I was growing up to go see my grandma. And after you've worked hard, you'd go sit under a tree and eat and start discussing all sorts of things. So here we discuss any and anything. There are no holy cows. We're very informal in the way that we do things. And I hope that you will enjoy the time that we'll be spending together.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having us.
Wonderful. So, quick question. I'm sure you saw the my Father's Day gift from my son, which, like I said, is probably the most precious thing I've received from him to date, because I think that's me in the background, and it's him up front. But I mean, it was so precious. How was Father's Day for you, Pastor Givemore?
Oh, Father's Day was excellent, Pastor. We started with a celebration that we had at church, and one of my son was talking, he gave a speech in church, which was actually heartwarming for a 6-year-old turning 7. He spoke very well, and he was reflecting on some of the things that we do together. Dad, you help me with chess when I'm playing with my sister, and you let me win. I said, okay, this is quite good. They do remember those small little things that we do with them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is very true. And, it's so amazing how these small things we do with our kids, for us, they might seem small, but in their world, it's really big. And they don't forget about it. I also remember growing up with my dad, we used to go play golf together, and how he would teach me to swing and putt and all those things. And those are things that I haven't forgotten.
Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful. So, Pastor Precious, you are the person who, for lack of a better word, made him become a father. But I mean, this is obviously stuff that there's a background to it. And before we dive into parenting and all those things, I want to know a little bit more about the story. They say every love story has a story, and one thing I've known is that the husband's version and the wife's version are usually very different. I'm going to start with you, Pastor Precious. Maybe give us a bit of background. Where did you meet this man? How did you end up at the altar with him? Like, what really is the background to the two of you?
Yeah, no, you're so right. Our versions are quite different, but they tell the same story,
Mm,
because I think you look at the same story, but the angles are different, the
right.
perceptions are different. And for me, it was really by divine appointment. I need
Mm,
to say that because everything in me was just not even interested with anything to do with boys at that time. I just given my life to the Lord
right.
a few months earlier. So when you are still a burning mother, you just
Burning
want
sisters.
Yeah, you're one of those sisters in church who's like, stay away, 1 meter apart.
go away.
You
So
invented social distancing. I see you.
exactly. And it was such a 180-degree turn for me. When you're 18 and you haven't
Mm,
been saved, it's all about boys and attention and everything. But Jesus intercepted me
so,
halfway through my 18th year. And in December, my friend said to me, there's a group of people that I know, they pray, they come together. I want us to go there for New Year's. And I was like, no, I'm not interested. Like I told her, I'm not even interested. I don't want to go.
right.
Because I just had this thing, about interdenominational ministries and stuff like that. So I was just, I don't want to go. You can go. But she forced me to go. And when I got there, for me, the first thing was, oh my goodness, these people pray at another level. I
Right.
was just in awe of the level of prayer and the dedication. And I was like, I've never seen something like this in my life. I was actually quite intimidated at that stage.
Okay.
So I did go there and I met them and I met the pastor who was running that ministry, such a man of God. He really challenged me. I think I would say he's responsible for me being where I am right now.
Right. Right.
That
Right.
man challenged me the first time he met me. He said, what are you doing for the kingdom? And he's just someone who really pushed me. So anyway, I continued going because I'd seen something there that I was like, God, I need this in my life. I need this level of prayer and dedication. And he was one of the people who intimidated me, actually. I was like, yo, this guy, the way he prays.
Wait. So who's intimidating? Is it the pastor or is it the pastor?
The pastor to be, it was the brother, one of the brothers, and yeah, for me, it was just like, okay, he's someone who I used to think he was so holy. Like, yeah, I don't know if I can explain. Like,
Right.
I was like, this guy, he is just on another level. And then a few months down the line, my pastor called me, that pastor, and he said to me, you know what, God wants to show you something. And I know
Okay.
most people are going to be like, this doesn't happen, but it happened to me. He said, God wants to show you something, and I want you to come back on Tuesday and tell me what God is going to show you. So there I was on Sunday. I'm sleeping and I'm having a dream where I've called people to my house and I've told them I'm getting married. Someone wants to pay lobola for me, but there was no one.
Yeah. From the
And
blue.
sorry?
I'm saying from the blue, like there's no one in the picture, and all of a sudden
No
you're
one.
dreaming about Lobola getting paid.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So in the dream, my aunt or my tete comes to me and she says, so where's the guy? I'm like, he's coming just now. He's coming. And I started panicking. So then I walked into our lounge. This was all happening in the house I grew up in. And my father had a couch that no one else sat. I think you know how things used to happen back then.
Mm.
My dad has his own couch. No one was allowed to sit there. And I walk in, and this guy is sitting on my father's couch.
Yeah.
And that is how I knew who was supposed to be my husband.
All
And
right.
a few months later, he approached me, and the rest is history. Now we are here.
Whoa, you've rushed because now a question has popped into my head. So between having the dream and him approaching you, like what were you
Yeah.
doing? Like, did you do like a Ruth kind of situation where you positioning yourself by Boaz's feet regularly to be seen? Like, how did you sort of handle knowing that this is the man that I'm supposed to be married to, and probably brother is somewhere up the mountain with his eyes closed? But
Yeah.
how did you handle that time of waiting, so to speak?
It was just so funny because my pastor then said to me, remember, he had said I should come back.
Yeah.
And he said to me, when I went back on Tuesday, I was like, I had this dream, and he was just laughing. He was just laughing at me. But it wasn't so straightforward. There were things that started happening to distract me from what God had ordained for me.
Mm.
There was someone who I had always considered my friend.
Ah.
But he was a guy, and all of a sudden, this guy from nowhere starts showing interest in me. So it wasn't a smooth period for me. It was a
Mm.
period of trying to pray and just believe in God, to say, God, I know there are distractions everywhere. There are now these things that are coming up. So it was a time of just searching myself and asking God, what do I really want in life? Because sometimes there are things that come to you, they seem like this is what is good for you.
Mm.
But when you seek God, God really directs your steps. So for me, it was a time of intense reflection and prayer.
Sure.
I can't really remember whether I was positioning myself closer to Boaz. I must be honest. But all I know is there was a lot of confusion and just praying to say, God, help me to walk the path that you have
Mm.
you have
Mm.
set for me. So it wasn't an easy season for me. Yeah.
Wow, wow. I think the principle that I'm going to take out of that is, in your time of waiting, it's important that you wait on God.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in such an instance, I mean, obviously, because you're friends, there's always
Yeah.
that tension of, okay, we're good friends already. This would be an
Yeah.
easy bridge for us to cross over. So the
Yeah.
brother wanted to jump over from the friend zone, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, the man of God was binding and loosing stuff somewhere. Maybe
Yeah.
let's hear from Pastor Givemore. I don't know. Do people in Joburg call you Pastor G, or am I going to be the first one?
I'm called a lot of things, so that one is fine.
It's Babati.
Baba T. I know
Yeah.
Baba T, but okay, let's keep it Baba T. So Baba T, tell us what was happening. I mean, she's told us her story. God gave her an amazing dream, which she had to look for interpretation. What was going on your side during this time?
So on my side, I think what actually happened was that, of course, during that time we were so busy with ministry, and dating or having a girlfriend was not even on the radar
Yeah.
for us. We were so busy organizing prayer retreats and getting people saved and doing. We are doing a lot of things, I
Yeah.
must say. We did crusades. We did a lot of things in that season. So it was really not on my radar. I think I was in my third year of university, not dating anybody at that point in time because we were just focused on what we were doing. However, on the day when she came to the prayer meeting, I had this insight when I saw her, that that scripture in the book of Genesis when Adam
So
woke up
Eve.
and said, "Bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh." I had that revelation.
Rema words.
Boom.
I
Wow.
had that revelation, but there was nothing actually between us. But I remember that day, that weekend when we were there. I think it was New
Yes.
Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Mm.
I had that revelation, and then I just kept it at the back of my mind. It was not something that I pursued immediately or showed interest immediately. But I think we continued fellowshipping together for a few months. Um, and I think now I was That was my final year at university, actually.
Yeah.
That was my final year at university. And as I was very close to I think it was towards the mid-year, when I felt that, what, I think it's time to pursue what what I knew that was the right thing. Of course, she did speak to the pastor, but the pastor did not speak to me about anything. So I was also in the dark.
Okay.
I was not.
I like this pastor of yours.
I was,
He's a good person.
He is.
I was not in the conversation. So I think then when I eventually said, you know what, now is the time, I took courage to go and approach this sister. We actually come from very different backgrounds.
Yeah.
She was not somebody whom I would naturally, approach, but I think I felt that it was the right thing for me to do.
Right.
Because I'd had that revelation that, this is the direction I need to take.
Yeah.
So I did approach, and it was a yes. And then the journey started.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we worked for a few years before we got married.
Yeah.
Wow. Wonderful, wonderful. So I mean, look,
On the point he's saying that we were from such different backgrounds. When we did premarital counseling, the pastor, this was a different pastor.
yeah.
He made us write our life stories. And he read our stories. He's like, a rural boy and a city girl, how do you come to gel so well? Like, it was just, people couldn't understand and comprehend how the two of us could come together and actually build something. But it was all about God and his purpose for our lives, so yeah.
I mean, I want to talk a little bit. So you guys, obviously, you get into courtship for a while, then eventually get married, right? And how long have you been married?
15 years.
So you've had 15 plus years of getting to know each other. And Pastor Givemore, obviously,
20 years of knowing each other.
So it's 20 plus years. So I mean, obviously, when you knew him, I'm going to take a guess that he was much more skinnier. And probably at that time, this is a man who's focused on God. And I mean, look, I've seen and observed your marriage over the last couple of years that I've known you. And there's one thing that is very apparent to me, and I think even to those around, that you're very good friends. And I'm going to take a wild guess and say, look, because you're coming from different backgrounds, what effect has that friendship, or has friendship had on your marriage? You going through all sorts of things.
I think for us, we did take a lot of time together, even before we got married, and in that period, we developed such a strong friendship. We were kind of inseparable, if I may call it.
Sure.
We were doing a lot of things together. At some point in time, I didn't have a car. I would take a combi, a lift from where I was, drop off along the way, pick up my girlfriend, my friend, take another lift, then we go together to town, and then she would take another lift to school, and it was the same story coming back. She'd come back she was now in university, and I think that was one of the reasons why it took a bit of time for us to get married, because Liz wanted you to finish your school at university. So you can see we spent a lot of time together. We would commute together, even if we were living in different suburbs. But the commute was we were doing it together.
Even though it was long, it was short and sweet.
Yes, too short.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Well, so look, it's been 20 years that you've known this woman, 15 that you've been married. and I believe you have 3 kids,
Yes.
or is it now 4? I'm losing count now, or is it 5? 4,
If you
5?
count our little dog,
I
he's also our baby.
was speaking prophetically for 4.
The Lord's will be done.
Let me hold back because Mama is looking at me. He's like, "Brah, I'm
Stop,
so
stop right there. Stop right there.
okay." So you've got 3 children, and
Yeah.
I mean, look, over the last 20 years, I'm sure it hasn't been smooth sailing for the 2 of you.
Mhm.
I mean, can you sort of take us back maybe to an instance, or what do you think has been what has it given you that staying power? Because I mean, people get married 3 years, 2 years, a year into their marriage, they're divorcing. What is
Yeah.
it for you? Would you say, look, this has been the reason why we've stuck it so long?
Yeah. I think for me, it goes back to the beginning.
Hmm.
I know that God has sent this man to me for a reason.
Right.
And I always tell him that he is God's gift to me.
Oh, wow.
That picture of him sitting in my father's couch, it speaks a million things to me.
Right.
This is not just about a ring and a gown and a house and kids. It's about
Mm,
him being the cover in my life, you
mm,
know. My father is late now, and that
yeah,
just opens up so many things for you as a girl child, you know.
sure.
And having him coming in to be that rock in my life, you
Sure.
know. I come from a broken home.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But when he came, I found that stability, that love, that sense of belonging, you
Mm,
know. So this is who God has given to me, and whatever I need to do in my life, whatever I need to accomplish, I know that God has given him to me, to walk with him the rest of my life. So
right.
that is always at the back of my mind when we're going through difficult times, when we don't agree on certain things, when we have misunderstandings. For me, there's just no exit clause.
Mm,
It's this is my partner for life. So for me, that has always been in the back of my mind that what God has ordained, I cannot undo that. And I can't let anyone or anything undo that as well.
sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. You're making me all fuzzy inside, my good. I don't know. What have you got to say about Matita? I mean, this was. I mean, she's telling us here that you are God blessing for her. I mean, what would you say is the thing that has made you stay 20 plus years, walking this journey with this woman?
For me, I think it's a couple of things. Whilst we came from different backgrounds, I think there's an element of becoming one. There's an element of coming
Mm,
together,
Yeah.
and find you know a common ground, a sweet place for you to stay there. And when you stay there, where you like a common place for both of you,
sure.
where you have agreed, this is where we are going, this is how we are going to do things.
Mm.
You find that there is a less and less and less conflict.
Mm.
Mm,
But if in many cases, while we should not lose our individual selves, but if individualism is the primary goal, is the most important thing for me, then I will not be able to submit to her, and won't be able to submit to me.
Mm.
right.
So I think for us, I think we are so blessed that we became best friends early on,
Mm.
and that friendship keeps us and continues to keep us, because in that friendship zone that we live together,
Mhm.
there is less conflict. There's not much. I know we have had differences, but we have not been, in a conflict where she has to sleep somewhere and I have to go somewhere. No, we have not
Mm.
been there
Yeah.
because of the friendship that we developed early on in our
Right.
marriage. And of
Right.
course, I don't want to repeat what she has already said, that
Mm,
when we came in, we believe that this is God ordained and there's no exit clause. And we have seen a lot in terms of what happens when people don't value this union, and they, for silly or for maybe not silly reasons, but for whatever reasons, they decide to go different routes. It has huge ramifications, and it is always in our prayer that we don't want those kind of ramifications for our children.
Yeah.
Right. I'm loving what I'm hearing, because it there's a principle behind it, and I think Ed Cole talks about it even in when you're going through his books, that the basis of marriage is friendship, and how it's important for you to have a friend that
Yeah.
you are walking with in the journey, and it's
Yeah.
easier to communicate with them. It's easier even to go through difficult times together, because you're committed and there's a friendship that's there. And I just want to say, looking, like I said, I've observed you. I see the friendship. I see you guys laugh together, and you do that quite a lot together.
Yeah.
And I think that also helps in as you're going through life, that you have fun together as well.
Yeah.
Now, in my mind, I'm also thinking, you are at varsity. I'm assuming, in a high school. She goes to varsity. You are now working, and then you get married 15 years ago. So we're looking about 2007 or so.
Yeah.
But now there's that transition from being two people in love, who are married to each other, to now being three, four, five in your instance now, where you're moving from being in courtship to being married, and now you're becoming parents. And a
Yeah.
lot of people, uh, look, a lot of people I've met struggle with that transition of becoming parents.
Yeah.
What was it like for you guys? Becoming first time parents, and like you mentioned, he's from the village, you're from the city. There's probably different parenting styles. What was that like for you? That dynamic, how did it sort of play out?
It was hard. I don't want to lie. I look at it and I say that was probably one of the toughest seasons of my life, my married life, mainly because of ignorance. There's so many things that I now know. If I had known back then, I would have avoided many of the difficult circumstances that I found myself in. Just conflict with the way you raise your children and the way maybe your mother-in-law raised her children, that causes so much conflict. And one thing that was important for me, though, at that time was just to find my voice and to know what we want as a couple and how we want to raise our children. And it was so funny that those conflict points, because I kept my my respectful awe of my mother-in-law and the family, some of the things would end up laughing. I'll give you an example, like issues to do with diapers, for example.
Right.
Then it was like, why are you using diapers and not cloth nappies?
Okay, so you're talking. Hold on. So we need to backtrack here, because we've got some Mama 2000 who are listening here. So
They don't even know.
They don't even know that there were cloth diapers. That it was almost like toweling kind of material.
Yeah.
And growing up, it was unheard of for people to have disposable diapers, which is what we now use as the norm.
Yeah.
So that became an issue. I'm taking that this became an issue of why not using cloth nappies instead of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because for me now, like I now understand, it was a perception to say, if you don't use cloth diapers, you are lazy. You don't want to. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, I at first I was like, I can't use disposables, like, because I've heard the murmurings. If I do that, then it's going to appear like, but then I noticed, no, my son isn't sleeping well because the cloth diaper gets wet and it wakes him up.
Yeah.
So then we made the decision, we're going to use disposables, right? And then the talk started happening in the corridors. She's using diapers, whatever. But what I want to bring about is I didn't disrespect my mother-in-law. And the funny thing is, when I left my child with her for a weekend and I gave her some money, she was like, "Oh, that money you gave me, I ended up buying diapers for the baby."
So now she's been converted as well.
She's converted. So I think for me, just when you are in family situations,
Uh,
just keep the respect. You don't need to disrespect the culture where you are coming in, but don't lose your identity. And if
right.
you have agreed on things as a couple, stick to it. You are creating your new family, your new story, and most of the times people just accept, like, okay, they've chosen this path. Maybe it's the better path. Let's go along with them. So those were
Wow.
some of the struggles that I had from a cultural perspective.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It's interesting you mentioned that because growing up we knew that diapers were it was a woman's thing. We were not involved
Mm.
in that. And I
Yeah.
remember we had a relative who at one point in time was caught by his brothers changing his daughter's diaper, and it was really an uproar. Like he was
Wow.
now making him, and for him he just said, look, she's my daughter, the mom is not here, she's at work, why should I
Yeah.
wait for the mother to come back? and
Yeah.
and I think it's the same thing that you're saying, like, look, sometimes you need to be able to stand up
Yeah.
uh, respectfully and
Yeah.
say, this is not for us, we are going to do things slightly differently. We still
Yes.
respect you, honor you as our parents, but we've got our own way of doing things.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Exactly.
yeah.
Interesting. Babati, do you want to weigh in on that one, or in your case, you're okay? You didn't have to worry about the diapers.
Of course, I was not really concerned about the diapers, but like especially for men as new fathers, there's a lot
Mm.
of things that we don't know.
Yeah.
Mm,
And in the case of myself, my father was already late at that point in time,
sure.
so there was no contribution from my dad on how these things work.
Mm.
So the only voice that was there was probably my mother's voice.
Mm.
So
Right.
you see now the problem it creates. The only thing that I know is what she's telling me.
Yeah.
She's the mother. But I think early on we came to a decision that it doesn't work. For me, I'm not that. I don't know what to call it. I don't want to call it traditional. So I'm not that traditional. I'm not traditional in that way.
Mm.
My wife's decision was the best for me, and we went with it. But of
Mm,
course, with all those memories and talking in the background, but
Yeah.
we were happy to proceed.
Yeah.
wow.
I think one
So,
more thing that I just want to bring about, like when the kids come,
mm,
just from being a couple, it's very easy to forget each other.
Yeah,
mm, mm,
Yes, and we realized that there were a lot of things that impacted our lives as a couple.
mm,
Hormonal changes that were happening in my body, transitioning from a woman and then having a child, and then you're putting all these things in your bodies that are just wreaking havoc with you.
mm,
We made so many mistakes that we were like, oh my gosh, why did we do this? So I think it's very important to understand that season where you are having
mm,
children.
right.
What do you need to do from a medical perspective? What do you need to do from a connection perspective as a couple?
mm,
Mm,
How do we support one another through
mm,
that season? I think we calculated, and the season that we were having babies spanned 10 years. We
mm,
were having babies.
mm,
And for a woman, it's not only the 9 months, right? It's the 9 months plus the time of breastfeeding and sleepless nights, plus the
mm,
time of now weaning off the child. So it can take you a good 2, 3 years to find yourself again.
mm,
Now, if you do this 3, 4 times in succession,
mm,
it
mm.
becomes a decade where you're doing Project Baby.
mm.
So support to each other in that season is so important, and understanding where both of you are. It's not only about the woman as well.
Yeah,
Mm, mm,
You
mm,
are influenced, and how do we support one another and not lose the spark and the friendship and the romance between the two of
yes,
mm,
yeah,
mm, mm, mm. I think very key what you mentioned that, and I think I'm also learning that now, because in my mind it's like, look, the baby is here. You should be back to your old self. But you then realize, no, it's an 18-month process that probably this woman
Yeah.
has to go through for her
Yeah.
to go back to normal.
Yeah.
And a lot of men, a lot of marriages sort of start struggling during that time, because there's a lot of pressures as well, because it's not just the baby. There's
Yeah.
work pressures. There's also life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You want to
yeah,
make progress as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's some very key nuggets there for us. The one being, don't neglect each other. And I
Yeah.
think the Bible says that husbands must live with their wives in understanding.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
this is the time, I think, as men, we need to show quite a lot of understanding to our wives.
Mm.
If they're
Mm.
going through quite a lot, what is it that I can do to help?
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it might be, can you just take the baby away for a walk? Give me some time to recoup myself.
Yeah.
And
mm,
I think these are very, very key nuggets you're bringing out here.
Yeah.
Um, Look, we just have to rush along very quickly, because we want to talk really around that transition. So you had your your oldest now, from my understanding, is pretty much approaching teen years, or is actually a teenager now.
He turns 14 next week.
Boom. So he's a teenager.
Yeah.
So he's transitioned from being a child. He's pretty much now a young man.
yeah.
And what has that transition been like? From when he was in diapers, moved over to being a toddler, went to school. Now he's in high school. What has been your greatest challenge now, seeing him grow into his own person?
Yeah, no, I think, and our oldest, of course, is a boy.
Mm,
And boys goes through different phases in their life. When they are still young, I think it's an easy phase to deal with. When they're still young, it's all about, you as a parent, you can easily direct their lives. You can easily influence their lives to
mm,
do what you think it is best for them.
Mm.
But as they grow older, they start having their own voice. They start
Mm.
having their own. They are developing into their own personality, and their personality may not be the same as your personality.
Mm.
They are a separate people. They are independent people. So they start growing their own ideas, which we should make sure that we are positioned to be able to understand what are those ideas, and then help them navigate. So then, as they grow older, it kind of your role kind of changes,
Yeah.
from an instructor
Mm-hmm.
to a coach and a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
As they grow old, I think if we miss that, I think that's when we start having major issues with our children.
Yeah.
When we miss the transition from being an instructor of their lives
Mm-hmm.
mm,
to being a coach and a mentor of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think by the time they get to 10 years old, if you have not changed your approach, you're already late.
Yeah.
Um, because then you start having fights with them.
mm,
And then many other issues then comes. I know many people do struggle with teenagers for different reasons, but
mm,
one of the reasons is when we don't change our approach from being an instructor of their lives to a coach and help them navigate this crazy world.
Yeah.
amazing, amazing. So there's that switch that needs to happen, and you need to be
Mm.
able to realize that, oh, my son is now going into his own person.
Yeah.
I no longer need to tell him, pick up your stuff and put it there. It's now of, okay, do you realize that your room is dirty?
Yeah.
And this doesn't look good. I think you do well
Mm.
to clean it. So the
Yeah.
approach has to sort of completely shift from what I'm hearing you say. I don't know,
Yeah.
Pastor Precious, what is your what has that transition been like for you? How have you managed it as a mother? Because now your oldest is a boy, man, and obviously mothers and their sons are inseparable
Yeah.
normally.
Yeah.
What has that been like for you, seeing your young boy change to
Yeah.
become a young man?
Well, firstly, it's like, I'm in one room and then I say, when did my brother come in? And then I see it's my son talking with a deep voice. So that has taken quite a bit of getting used to. But I really thank God for Dr. Makoni.
Yeah.
There's a teaching that he gave on cutting the mother's apron strings. That
Hmm.
teaching changed my life, and it was just at the right time, because I think it was shared last year, and he was turning 13.
Right.
So, using the lessons that were shared in that sermon, I realized I needed to let go me, not wait for
Hmm.
him to cut. So, even on his 13th birthday, we organized that there would be men who he looks up to
Right.
dial in. Remember, we were in lockdown, so we had like a teleconference thing with all these men that he looks up to. And I said, I'm not going to say anything here, because for me, it was like a transition. I'm saying, God, I'm handing him over to the men, because these are the voices that he now needs to hear in his life, you
Right.
know.
Right. Right.
Um, and I think that meant so much to him, because he realized I'm not mama's boy anymore.
Hmm.
However, we didn't lose the bond that we share. So every day after school, I go pick him up. We just sit for a few minutes in the car. He updates me on his day. And, it's in those moments where I tell him, you know what, this is what you need to do. Be careful of this. So I still have input, but he realizes that he's not with mommy anymore. He's now a young man growing
Hmm.
up to be a man one day.
Wow. Wow. I
Mhm.
love that the concept that you guys did at 13. You almost had it's called a bar mitzvah of
A
sort,
bar mitzvah,
where
sort of, yes.
you're now
Yeah.
telling you're growing up, you're now an adult,
Yeah.
and I mean, he also has to take responsibility, and he has to obviously find his role models amongst men.
Yes.
And we thank Dr. Makoni for his teaching, and I'll ask him for a copy of that tape. Maybe
Yeah.
one or two other people would want to listen to that, because
Yeah.
it's important that that uh, umbilical cord, for lack of a better word, is cut, because
True.
the last thing you want is a very grown man with a family who is still tied to his mother. And a lot of
Yeah.
marriages suffer because mothers and sons don't get to separate.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about your son. You've got a daughter who's also growing,
Yeah.
uh, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, these people are obviously growing to becoming adults. Your son is 14, so he's not only maturing in terms of his thinking, even
Mm-hmm.
spiritually, he's also maturing,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
physically, his body's changing.
Yeah.
And whenever you have teenagers being spoken about, there's this issue of relationships, sex, drugs, and the like.
Yeah.
When do you, as a parent, now come in and say, son, sit down, I want to talk to you about the birds and the bees? Is it at 14? Is it at what age do you do it? And
Mm.
how do you actually get to sit them down? I mean, um, we were told growing up that it's your uncles who tell you about life, not
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
parents.
Mm.
And your girl child is supposed to be instructed by her aunts.
Yeah.
But in this case, we don't have that support base that we had back then, because we are away from each other because of work and the like. How
Yeah.
do you, as a now parent, step in and actually get to talk to your children about these things that are very pivotal and critical for their life?
Now, so if I can just jump in, that's a very, very important subject, Pastor O. The tragedy is that as parents, we only realize it and want to talk about it when it's already too late.
Mm.
And especially here in South Africa, our school system, sex education is given very early.
Mm.
I think grade 4 or 5, they're already talking about these things.
Mm.
So what then happens is that we are in our shells here as parents, waiting for 14 years when the 7-year-olds already they've already spoken about a lot of things, including homosexuality
Mm-hmm.
and all things sexual. That of course they do it age appropriately in school, but however, the teaching that they get in schools may not necessarily align with our belief systems
Yes.
Mm.
as being Christians. And hence, that's the need for us to actually engage on those subjects early. I think it's even dire in this day and age when even the programs that our 5-year-olds, 3-year-olds are watching are already bringing in aspects of sexuality, homosexuality, transgender, all the agendas that you can talk about. So having said that, it's definitely, of course, there is time for you to really sit with your child, but I think the interventions needs to happen early enough and on an ongoing basis. Especially, for example, when you watch TV with your children, those things come up. Those are easy opportunities to bring up some of those subjects and give direction and instruction on some of the things, even to a 5-year-old when they start picking up some of these things on TV. But I think early on or later on in life, especially when 8, 9, 10, that age, I think it's important now to really sit with them, because it is at that stage then they start experimenting or become curious to know a lot of things. And it is an opportunity as parents then to sit down with them and explain to them all these things, the effects of it, the problems associated with it. I don't know if you'd want to add something.
Yeah, I think sometimes maybe you are too late, or you didn't do it in time. I don't think you are ever too late. Most of the time, especially us as African parents, we are quite reactionary. So when I see that my child has been Googling these things, that's when now I want to start. Maybe I shout at them or I punish them. But it's okay if you haven't done it. I think now is the right time for us to sit down with the kids and explain to them, okay, you're going to come across these things. This is what it means for you. These are the consequences of you doing A, B, C, D, or watching A, B, C, D. So it's more about showing the child the consequences rather than chiding them, shouting at them. We need to have a relationship with these children and guide them properly. Yeah, within the fear of God as well, because I believe that still keeps us, the fear of God keeps us away from so many things. So bringing the fear of God, but in a loving way, to say, hey, this is not on. If you walk down this path, this is going to be the end of that path. So let's keep the relationship open. Let's not be like, I think in the olden days, parents were there to be feared. Children could not approach them and tell them, the struggles they are having. So spending time with each child individually is something that has been so important to me, to hear them out. Because when you have many kids, it's easy to lose out on what's happening in each and every one of them, their lives. So we are quite intentional to spend time with each and every one of them and just see where are they, what's happening in their lives, what are they struggling with at this moment.
Sure. I mean, there's so much we can talk around this particular topic, because it also touches on the issue of internet use and gadgets.
That's the real pandemic.
Tell us how have you guys dealt with that in your home, and what tips can you give us parents who are still growing? We've got a 2-year-old, very soon will be 14 as well. What would you say is like, look, this is what we've done, and this is what has worked for us?
I'll leave the chief architect of the network system.
She's the one who's in IT.
The security officer of the house.
Chief security officer. Cyber security.
I think we learned the hard way. So at our kids' school, they start using devices at grade 4. Okay. So we gave our child the tablet, and then at that time we were still staying with my brother. And then my brother said to me, do you know that he wakes up at 4 and he starts playing on his gadget? And that was a wake-up call for us. We were like, oh no, this is not on. And when you start, you're like, my child will never.
Right.
And then it was at that stage that we then saw that we had to put in controls. For example, no one sleeps with a device in their room. So all the devices at night, they are put in our room. We don't care who you are, what age you are, you're going to put your devices in our room. And then we've also got the apps However, the apps are not foolproof. Hey, we've got
Right.
2 apps running at this stage. So what we also learned, and one thing that my husband is he's so insistent on, is let's teach the children to regulate themselves, to
Mm,
be on the lookout for the bad things, because one day they're not going to be here. There'll be
mm,
no apps, there'll be no control. So we're
right.
trying to just teach the kids to regulate themselves, to say, is this a good thing? You know, even when the app reports to say your child was searching this, we take them and then we sit down with them and we're like, okay, what is this about? What do you think? You know, so you get the conversation going.
Mm,
So the app, as much as it is to protect them, it's also an opportunity to talk to them, to say, I see
okay.
that you've been, because it flags things to say he was looking at things that are sexual violence or bullying related, you know, so it
Yeah.
flags those things. So, and I think it's a very good app to have, because it then shows you if your child is maybe going through some things, you'll see them looking at videos that show that they are not in a good space, you know.
Mm, mm,
Yeah,
mm.
so those kind of things, but most importantly, our children should learn to regulate themselves.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
So, Chief Cyber Security Officer in the Mushayi household, what
Yes.
apps are we talking about here? Because for some parents who maybe are listening, they're digital immigrants.
Yeah.
Uh, they really don't even understand how these apps work. All they know is
Yeah.
my son needs to do his homework. I'm gonna
Yeah.
give him his tablet. He does what he does,
Yeah.
and yeah, wherever they are. What
Yeah.
apps are we looking at? Because I know we had some years back there was Covenant Eyes. That's
Yeah.
particularly porn and other things. But you
Yeah.
mentioned there's 2 apps that are running. Which
Yes.
app? By the way, this is not an advert for them, but these are the apps
This
that
is
you
not a
guys.
sponsored video. Okay, so the main one that we use is called Bark.
Okay,
And there's actually a very good YouTube video that they did on the dangers of internet access for children,
right,
which I would recommend, and I'll send you the link you can share with the rest of the church.
great.
So Bark is the primary app, and then there's also an app called Screen Time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm, mm, mm. So both of these are working hand in hand. They're sending you they're so we want to get an understanding of how they work. So Bark would be installed on that person's device or your child's device,
Yeah.
and it sends you a report on the things that they've been searching for on YouTube and the like. And you as
Yeah.
an parent can use that as a discussion point with them so that you
Yeah.
understand where they are and how best
Yeah.
to help.
Yeah.
Um,
So you flag you tick to say send me reminders on anything to do with bullying, violence, sexuality, etc. So it's up to
Suicidal.
suicidal, yeah, those
mm,
kind of things. You flag and then it guards against those things. It sends you a daily report or a weekly report, and then you can have discussions with your child or yeah.
wow. So I mean, as a
If I
parent, yeah, no, go ahead, Babati.
No, no, I was just going to talk about the screen time. You know, the one of the biggest challenges with access to devices is regulating the time they spend on screens.
Yeah.
I think a lot of research has come out in terms of the impact of children staying on screens, in terms of the physical fitness and
Mm,
eyes and eye health. A lot of things are affected by screen time. Mental health is
Mm,
affected by the time they spend on their screens.
yeah.
And I think when we instituted a screen time was to regulate the time the children are on screens.
Yeah.
right.
So and I think at the height of it,
It was so
they
bad.
had to budget their time, to
Mm,
be on a device, because if you've been given 2 hours, at the end of 2 hours, it then just shut down the device and you can't operate. So
Oh,
it
okay, okay. I like this one because what it basically does is you're telling your child you've got 2 hours in a day to use the
yeah.
device.
Yeah.
yes.
So if you want, you can spend time on YouTube. If you do anything there, I'll get to know about it anyway. Or
Yeah.
you can get to do your homework, which you're supposed to be doing anyway. Um,
Exactly.
okay, right. So I think then it forces them to start weighing consequences of their actions as they're going
Mm,
on.
yeah.
Mm, yeah.
Wow, interesting. So are these apps paid for?
Yes, but you know, The cost is well worth it. I think you're
Right.
looking at a cost about 70 Rand a month
Okay.
for each of the apps. So I don't think anything is worth the safety of our children out there.
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So
Um,
obviously there's a trial period, and then you then do the monthly subscription.
Amazing. So, I mean, for 70 Rand for each app, you get to safeguard your child from being polluted by the world.
Hmm.
And you can't put a price on your child's safety and their future. And I mean, look, there's a lot we can actually even explore around this. And I still got a lot of questions I want to ask you, but I'm looking at my time and I'm thinking, I've already kept you longer than I had promised I would because we've been having so much fun. This is what happens under the
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the next minute or so, I'm gonna ask if you can, from your experience as parents, having had obviously you've got a teenager now in the house and you've moved through seasons together, would you give us even what would you say to somebody as the tip, or as saying, look, this is what will help you in your parenting life, as we come to a close? What would you say is like this is the golden thread for you?
I think from my end is I think the most important thing is to be able to connect with the child at any given level,
Mhm.
whether it is at a young level, a young age. For example, we know that, for example, there's a saying of the terrible twos. The reason why they're called terrible twos is that they want to express an emotion, but the next person does not understand what they're saying, and then they
Mm.
just get frustrated.
Yeah.
We think that is a phenomenon for terrible twos, but actually it is applicable throughout the life of a person.
Mm.
You know, if they are at a stage where they want to communicate, but we are not understanding each other,
Mm.
it builds frustration, and then you lose them along the way. Then they
Mm.
tend to do their own thing.
Mm.
So I think it's the thing that is becoming very, very important for me is to find that common thing, or that thing that can connect me with my child.
Mm.
For example, with our teenage son, I think we Formula One is helping us to connect. You know,
Mm.
Right.
we watch the races together, we talk about it,
Mm.
and that then gives a connection where we can have other conversations.
Mm.
So I think as parents, we should strive never to lose the connection with their child. As they
Mm.
grow up, they lose interest in some things, they develop new interests, they develop new things that they want to, that are very important for them at different stages of their lives. If we can connect to that, then we will not lose them. We'll be able to speak anything else with them that
Sure.
is of importance. Thank
That's
you.
amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. My Didi, anything from your side?
Yeah, I think we are very good at learning how to be wives and husbands, but we don't want to learn how to be parents. So
Mm.
for me, what has helped me is investing, because when I remember, I said I come from a broken home.
Yeah.
So some of these things I never saw them. I never
Mm.
experienced them. So I've been intentional to buy books, do watch clips, do anything to help me in this journey. And I
Mm.
promise you, it's well worth it. Invest in your parenting journey, because we are talking about people's lives here. We are
Mm,
talking about destinies.
mm.
And most of us were broken because our parents made mistakes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
let's invest in us as parents. Learn, learn, learn. You cannot learn enough when it comes to parenting. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I have had such an amazing time with Pastor Givemore and Precious from Celebration Church Johannesburg. But I, I, I think there's a lot that you've spoken about. I've learned a lot from your lives generally, and even your parenting journey. And I just want to say thank you so much for availing yourself for us. And I think whoever's listening, whoever's going to listen to this will be ministered to. Thank you so much. But Saints, that's it for today. We've come to the end of Under the Fig Tree. Perhaps we'll have Pastor Givemore and Precious back, and we'll talk more around parenting girls versus boys. And there's a whole lot of topics that I'd love to dig deeper.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
but I think there's a lot of nuggets that we've got from you. Thank you so much. So, Saints, we've come to the end of of being under the fig tree. Until we meet again, please stay strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. God bless you.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us online. We hope and trust that you've been blessed by this service. Stay connected with us through our social media platforms, Facebook and WhatsApp. As we go, stay safe, stay blessed, stay connected.